This is the Motivated Business Show, hosted by me, Mark Terrell, the author of Motivated, the Reluctant Leader's Guide to Building a Business that Sets You Free. In my book, I share the 7-step process to get the measure of your business. M.E.A.S.U.R.E is an acronym that stands for Mirror, Evaluate, Action, Systemize, Unify, Review, and Energize. On each episode, I'll be chatting to a business owner about how they stay motivated and how they've got the measure of their business. So without further ado, let's find out who's joining me on this episode. Hello and welcome to this edition of the Motivated Business Show with me, Mark Terrell. Today's guest I met a few months ago. He was running an event, and so that's going to be the topic today: events, networking, and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully you'll get lots of value from that. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. Just before before I bring my guest on, I'd just like to introduce the book. If you've not realised, I wrote a book which is called Motivated. You can get that book from Amazon or from my website. And the reason I'm mentioning the book is because I talk about during the podcast the 7-step process that I wrote about in the book. There's a 7-step process which are called How to Get the Measure of your Business. And during the conversation, and particularly at the end of the conversation, I'm going to refer to the 7-step process and bring it to a bit more life so that you get more context with regards to what the 7-step process is all about. I'd like to just introduce the Buy Me a Coffee concept. If you'd like to contribute to the podcast, just keep the wheels moving, then if you click on the link, which will be somewhere, wherever you're watching this, just to click through, you can buy me a coffee, which is £5, or if you buy me 2 coffees, I'll actually send you a copy of my book as a thank you. And what I'm going to do now is try to create enough money to buy myself a Stream Deck. So for you in the know, you'd know what a Stream Deck is, but if you don't know what Stream Deck is, it's actually a piece of kit that I can actually use to be a bit more efficient with my time during these streams. At the moment, I'm relying on a mouse, which isn't as great as having a Stream Deck. There's a QR code if you'd like to click through and just contribute. That would be much appreciated. And like I say, once I get to, I think it's about £149 of contributions, then I'm going to invest that into a Stream Deck. Right, without further ado, let's bring on my guest. Welcome, Paul.
Good morning.
Good stuff. You're loud and clear, which is a good sign. Before we move on, then, just give you a little bit of an introduction, a time to introduce yourself, I should say. Let's do that.
Morning, and thanks for having me on, Mark. It's the first time that I've done something like this, so really excited. My name's Paul Stoneman. I'm the co-founder and managing director of the Network Kings. We're more or less a brand new business, about 6 weeks old now, as an event management company, and we are hosting our first event in Bristol on the 9th of May. So exciting times.
Looking forward to hearing more about that, Paul, and obviously seeing how things progress from this point. So all my guests, I asked for them some topics to talk about. And the first topic you gave me to talk about was networking, but in particular, how you used to hate it. So yeah. I had a coach on recently who said that he used to couldn't even see the point of coaching, but now he actually does coaching. So it's interesting how you can flip from one to the other. So how have you become a lover of networking when you used to hate it?
Yeah, so I mean, for the first 10, 15 years of my career, I worked in a very different environment, an environment I probably wasn't best suited to, like call center work, outbound sales and telephone work. And whilst I learned a lot and I met some great people through it, I never felt excited by it. One time I was working as I was the junior telesalesperson, setting appointments for the more senior salespeople, and I got asked to go to a networking event in London. It was a Chamber of Chamber of Secrets then, Chamber of Commerce networking event, and I turned up and I didn't know what I was doing there. Everyone looked more important than me. Everyone looks more comfortable than me. I'd not really been prepped on how I was supposed to interact with people. There was nothing like speed networking or any forced networking. It was just in a room, and I kind of stayed, and I think I spoke to a few people, and I got absolutely no value out of it. I went back to the office with no leads, and I was just like, no connections, and I just didn't see the point in it. And then I didn't do it again for a long time, and by the time I next did one, it was I'd moved to Bristol by this point, and it was I can't remember the venue, but it was on Gloucester Road, and it was really welcoming to begin with. They had a guest. They had a guest food provider there handing out food as we arrived, canapes. They had people welcoming you. I was a bit more confident by this point, so I went and joined some people and said hello. And by the end of that event, I'd actually put myself out there and spoken in front of the 60 odd people, pitched the business that I was working for, went away with about 10, 15 connections who I followed up with, some who I'm still in touch with now, some who I've done business with. And at that point, I was like, okay, that's what networking's supposed to be like. You're not always going to meet a client there, but you're always going to meet someone valuable. You're always going to meet someone interesting. So that's the kind of the 360 that's happened there.
I think it's all about expectations, isn't it? I think the first time you went, then there was an expectation that you had to get contacts, and obviously those contacts had to be good leads that then would become clients of some sort. And it's tough, I think, with especially when you're networking on behalf of somebody else or behalf of an organisation. It's completely different than it is when you're networking for yourself. It's a different sort of dynamics, and you can set the criteria as well, can't you?
It is a different dynamic, but at events that I've been lucky enough to run in the past, I've seen a lot of people that are a lot of youngsters come to the events, quite often with a more senior person from the business who's kind of showing them the ropes, because people are scared. But actually, the networking, if it's a good event with the right people, that it's the least scary thing in the world, because people are just there to, it's almost like socializing. It is effectively socializing. But everyone there has a reason for being there, so it's almost easier. It's easier to strike up conversation. But if you don't know that as a youngster, so we've tried to make events that I've run in the past, and the events that we're doing with the Network Kings will have a very, very welcoming open. We're trying to talk to everybody that's buying a ticket in advance of the event, so that they feel comfortable, so that they know who we are, and when they arrive, there'll be a big smile that will be ready with their name badge and their welcome pack, and we'll tell them what's going to happen in the day. And I think if you get that environment right, then networking's the best. I go to some great ones. I go to the M.E.A.S.U.R.E networking event in Bristol, and it's just so welcoming. I've met lots of people that I've done business with there, but more so, I'm in a WhatsApp group with 200 people that you can always ask for advice, and it's great. I've used it recently to ask for various different. Does anyone have a contact that does this? Does anyone have a contact that does that? And once you build that network, life just gets easier.
Yeah.
So
yeah. You're absolutely spot on. I think with regards to what you've described there, it's about being hospitable, isn't it? It's for hospitality. It's making people feel at ease, and when people are at ease, they're definitely going to connect better. Because you're not going to connect very well if you're a bit anxious and a bit uptight. That's for sure. So let's talk about the events that you're now getting involved with, and why you're actually events are your thing. I suppose. What's the background you have with regards to events?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I got into it quite late. Like I said, I worked in call center type environments for a number of years. I started off on the phones and worked my way up as a coach and team leader, and then I was running a sales department. And although I wasn't bad at it, and it was interesting that you mentioned coaching earlier, because coaching was something that I really loved, but I found the consistency difficult doing it on a daily basis with the team. But it's very, very valuable if you're the right type of person to do coaching. Then it's a really valuable skill to have. And I learned lots of things there, but I never felt like I was quite in the right place. And then an opportunity for redundancy, for voluntary redundancy came up, and I spoke to my wife, and we just had a kid, and I was like, it's a bit risky, but I feel like if I don't take the opportunity now, I might never, and I'm going to take the voluntary redundancy, which will tide us over for a few months, and just try and find something that feels more natural. And I saw a job. I was in my early to mid 30s, and I saw a job working at Prism nightclub in Bristol, and I thought, am I a bit old for that? I'm not really sure. Would I even get that job? So I went for it, and had to have 4 interviews because they weren't sure about my experience because I'd not had the events experience before, and then eventually ended up getting the job, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me in terms of my future career because they didn't really although they'd had people in that role before, they'd never had anybody in that role that was very successful. I was quite successful and got them lots of corporate business in, and then suddenly I had to facilitate that, all of the corporate events, Christmas parties and networking things, and I didn't really have experience in it, but I really enjoyed it and just made it work. And over 4 years working there, I got realized I was quite good at it. Then I had the opportunity to go and join Forwarder, which was a different type of event, and did that for about a year, and I feel like I did a very good job of taking it from a very new event which into something that was well recognized and worked well, and now I'm doing a similar thing. We're not doing exactly the same as what we were doing at Forwarder, but the format is similar, because I know I'm good at it, and I'm doing it for myself with my colleague, or my business partner Tony, and I can't even remember what the question was, but
Just the background to events.
yeah,
But you mentioned Tony there, and we talked about this before we went live, and the importance of having that person that you're working with. You talk about the wider network you've got, but actually when you're working with someone closely, it's having that sort of yin and yang. So do you want to just talk about a little bit about how, in the short amount of time that you've been working together in the last few weeks, how you found that relationship has developed?
yeah. So Tony and I worked together previously, when we were employed together, and then now we've taken on the Network Kings, and Tony came up with the name, the Network Kings. Tony's done the design. I think I said to you before, I'm quite impulsive, and I have a lot of ideas, and I put myself out there, and I don't feel like I've got particularly great marketing skills, but I'm just like, I'll always try and be visible. Tony isn't that person, but what Tony does complements what I do really, really well, because he makes sure that everything's being organised behind the scenes. He makes sure he's got a great design skill set, so he's doing all of our branding and all of these bits, which even if I had the capabilities to, I probably wouldn't, because I'll think of an idea and then I'll go on to the next idea. And Tony takes, don't get me wrong, Tony has some great ideas of his own as well, but Tony also takes the ideas that I have and goes, right, that one's good, that one's not good. So let's make that one happen, because you're not going to make it happen, so I'll make it happen. And it works really nicely. Um, and yeah, I think it's really important, particularly when you're in a position like us where we can't really afford for this to fail. If So it's really important that you've got, you're never going to have all of the skills that you need within a business when there's only two of you, but it's really important that you've got the right balance, that you get on well, that you can tell each other that you disagree with their point of view without it becoming an argument.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Sounds like you've got a great working relationship already. So it takes time for that to happen, but you've had to do it quite quickly. Mentioned that you've only been sort of training for is it 6 weeks, something like that?
Yeah,
So
well,
I'm guessing you've been on quite a steep learning curve in that few weeks.
we really have, and we had to make some decisions in February about what the next steps were going to be, and we ended up setting up the Network Kings, which we did very, very quickly. Tony came up with the name, then he came up with the brand, and you can see the logo on our baseball caps, and we got to that point where we were like, right, we've got a name and a brand, but what are we? And I'm very passionate about events. I think it's where I should be working, and so we said, well, how can we make this work? Because we don't have an income at the moment, so we have to make it work quickly. And because of the network, which I talked about earlier, the importance of having a network, we know a lot of people, and Alex reached out and said, look, our MD is looking at maybe doing an event. I've told him that you guys might be available. Are you interested in having a chat? So we had the chat, and then we had a coffee, and then we had a Teams meeting, and then we agreed that we were going to come up with a brand, which is Industry Connect at the moment. That we were going to work with Pinnacle Business Finance. They were going to be our main sponsor, if you like, for this first event, and hopefully we'll turn it into a series of events. And they kind of gave us the foundation to be able to go, right, we can do it now. We just needed a little bit of backing. We're doing our best to promote them and get them what they need from the event with the people in the room and that kind of thing, which is what we're good at, but we didn't have the backing. So that all stemmed from having the network. We built the network that link us into people. So at that point, it was, it was like, right, we can do this now. So we've got to focus long term. We still don't know exactly what the long-term business looks like. We hope that we have a roaring successful event, that Pinnacle get exactly what they want out of it, that they want to roll out 3 more events around the country, and then we've got a business plan for the next year. But at the moment, we're just focusing on making this as good as it can be. Other revenue streams are coming in from different places, which is great. We've got people that like what we do that have agreed to sponsor the event, which is making things a bit easier. And we're absolutely blown away by the number of people that have already bought tickets, and the diverse kind of range of businesses as well. We've got all the way from one-man businesses, that marketers and coaches and those type of businesses, through to DSV, which are one of the biggest logistics companies in the world, to NatWest and businesses like this. So we've been blown away by the reaction, and we think we can make it successful now. But we'll do this event, and we'll hopefully add another 50 people to our network. That's what it's all about for me. Is the money at the moment? We're not about making millions of pounds at the moment. We've got to support our families, and we've got to get through financially. But actually, for me, it's like, I'm going to add another 50 people to my network. Those 50 people I'll be able to add value to, and they'll be able to add value to me somewhere along the line. And I'm sure some friendships will come from it as well. So
yeah. For those that are not, well, for me as well, what do you think makes a great event? I mean, what are the elements you say? You talked about the importance of hospitality, but what other things do you think should be included in events?
I think hospitality is a big thing, and I think it's a relatively new thing in terms of the event that I talked about earlier, that I went to, whatever it was, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, that I didn't enjoy. It was in a nice venue. Everybody looked nice. It looked nice, but it very much had an old boys club feel. People knew each other. They were in a group. They weren't bothered about the young kid that just walked in, and there wasn't that hospitality feel. So that is very important, because if people feel right, then they feel right. I always say to everybody, on the day that I'm running an event, actually the thing that I kind of live with a nervous energy, but on the day of an event, I don't feel the massive butterflies that something's going to go wrong. The only thing I get nervous about is, are people going to show up? And as soon as I see a queue, I'm fine, because I know that that something is going to go wrong. There's no point in worrying about if something's going to go wrong. Something is going to go wrong. So it's A, how you deal with it, but B, have you got the relationship with people that they don't actually care that something's gone wrong, because they know that you're doing a good job. But in answer to your question about what makes a good event, it needs to be engaging. So we're looking at using some software in the next event. So we've got some great speakers, but even when you've got great speakers, sometimes if you're listening to speaking for too long, it can get a bit dry. So we're going to use some software with this one, so that the audience can engage with the speakers throughout, so they can ask them questions live. And I'm quite excited about that. The speakers are also going to be asked to do some polls with the audience, so they can get a gauge of people's feelings in the room. Stuff like that. But also, really, it's having the right people in the room. If you go to a networking event and you've got 100 people that are your competitors, then you might have some decent chats, you might learn something, but you're not going to get out of it what you've taken the afternoon off work to do, which is to grow your brand or meet some new clients. So that's really important, and we spend a lot of time focused, and we look daily who's coming to our event. Right, we've got a great number of people that do this or are from this industry, so now we need to put some energy into getting some people from that industry to complement it. So that's important. when it's this type of event. And then also, I think having some humour, is some of the things that we're going to be talking about are quite serious. We've got Children's Hospice Southwest as our charity, and they do some great work, and they're one of the most joyful companies I've ever worked with, actually. But the topic is not nice, it's children that are in terminal situations and kind of so, but it still needs to be. The audience still needs to, the audience will be heartbroken by the story that they're going to hear from Tamara about some of the children, but they're also going to see the joy on the families' faces, and so that's really important. Getting that right, it needs to be. So our compare, who we're going to be announcing in the next couple of days, Touchwood, we've more or less agreed, is a stand-up comedian, and she's done lots of TV work, comparing and stuff. So she'll have the professional element, but being able to bring that entertainment throughout will. I'm really excited about what we're going to do, and I think all of those elements mixed together will make a good event. And the way to measure whether it's a good event for me is we will see at the end. We're doing a drinks reception with a pianist and some canapes, and we'll be able to tell whether it was a good event by whether people come to that bit or whether people leave at the end of the event. If they're engaged, they will be there. Some people will have to, but if they're engaged, they'll be there for that bit. And we saw that at the Forwarder event in London, particularly in Heathrow in October, where we still had 50 people with us socialising at 2:30 a.m. and the hotel told us to go to bed because the pilots were
right.
It's
a good sign.
So, I know that was a good event because those people wouldn't have stayed if they hadn't have been getting value from it, hadn't have enjoyed themselves. So,
Brilliant. I like the idea of the technology and getting the feedback from the audience. That sounds great. So I hope that all works well with, we know what technology is like when we it doesn't. So fingers crossed on that one.
It's one of those things that will definitely go wrong, but it will add value. So
yeah. So you've mentioned a couple of tie-ups you've had recently. So do you want to just talk about some tie-ups that you've managed to get going already with the business, and that's how that's going to work?
Yeah. So Maria Lawless is the chairperson of M.E.A.S.U.R.E for the Surrey region. M.E.A.S.U.R.E is the British Irish Trade Alliance. So it's a trade association, effectively business to business, lots of businesses across the UK, Ireland, and further afield now. And I've known Maria for a while, so I reached out to her and I said, "This is what we're trying to do. Would you like to speak at our event?" Because she's a great speaker, and how can we help you with what M.E.A.S.U.R.E are trying to achieve, and can we use M.E.A.S.U.R.E to market ourselves, because they've got a big reach, and whilst we've got a reasonably big reach, we have no business reach because we're 6 weeks old. So and they've come on board, so M.E.A.S.U.R.E are supporting us on this event, and we're talking about supporting M.E.A.S.U.R.E with some of their future events. There's one in London which we're looking at putting on with them at the moment, where we'll be kind of the event management company behind the event. So that's a really exciting link up, because they're a well-known brand, and they've got a lot of businesses involved, and a lot of M.E.A.S.U.R.E members are going to be coming to our event, Industry Connect in Bristol. Then the other one is the event called M.E.A.S.U.R.E, which is a company based in Clevedon, where I live, and it's a fascinating company. They've got so many different things that they do. They own escape rooms. They own a bar which has got a bowling alley. They've got a big bit of land in Bristol which they use for car parking. They use for car boot sales, and they also want to start pushing that for being a private hire area that corporates, businesses can hire out, and weddings and those type of things. It's a beautiful bit of land underneath the Clifton Suspension Bridge. So they advertised a role just as I was starting the Network Kings, and I wanted to have a little bit of income coming in. So I kind of applied for it, and we had a few chats, and they said, "Look, actually, we need to push our stuff on social media, and you're very active on social media. Do you want to work on that?" So I'm working for them on their social media, and the Clanage in Bristol, I think, is going to be an amazing event space soon, which is what I'm really excited about. They've got a few other products as well, like a product called Study, which is a car parking management tool, which they've had built based on the success that they've had managing car parking for Ashton Gate on their bit of land.
Right.
So I'm working with them 2 days a week at the moment, and they've got some amazing stuff going on. So
Good stuff.
yeah,
Excellent. Right, so I'm going to get you sit back in your comfy chair for a few minutes, Paul. I want to just talk a little bit about the 7-step process in the book, and why those important steps are there, and relate it to what you've been talking about. So I think the first thing we should talk about is understanding yourself is the first step. We haven't really talked much about that today, so I won't dwell on that too much. But the next step is about evaluating, and this is where you're very much at the moment, Paul, aren't you? Evaluating where you're going, and you're making what feels like big decisions, but and you don't quite know how they're going to work out. But it's all about understanding where you are and where you want to be, and obviously the steps in between. Evaluating how you're going to do that, and it sounds like you've learned a lot in the last few weeks already. So understanding how that all those steps you've taken will allow you to get to where you need to go. The next step is about taking the action, as you've been taking plenty of action already. And you got your first event coming up. I think it's the 9th of May, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something like that. So look out for that. We'll put the link in the comments. So for anybody that's interested, to check that out. And once you take in action, the next step is then to systemize things and start making sure that things happen automatically. So systemizing is, I think, one of the most important steps if you want your business to grow, in that if you don't systemize things, then you're just reinventing the wheel every time. So systemizing is when you realize that something actually works, it's important for the business, and systemizing it makes it not only more consistent, it allows you to pass it over to somebody else to do. And when you're running a business, that's one of the things that you'll find is your time is the crucial thing. And the sooner you can pass what we see as sort of day-to-day activities to other people to do, then that frees up your time to carry on with letting the business grow, or helping you're making sure that your responsibility is to make sure that the business is growing. So that's the 7-step process. The last 3 steps, if you're interested, is more about building a team. Paul's not really at that stage yet, but I'm sure the way things are going, he will be starting to think about how he's going to do that. One of the concepts I talk about in the early steps in the book is the concept that I found in the decision book. So this isn't a concept I made it myself, but it's called the rubber band model. It's in the decision book, and you can see there on the screen it says we have to decide what's holding you and what's pulling you. So when we are making a big decision, like starting a business, for instance, there will be things that are holding you back. So it might be things that are tied to your past decisions, or the things that you're comfortable with. Those are always going on, but there's also things that are pulling you forward into things that are new. And with regards to those 2 elements, it's always happening. So it's been understanding that they're going on, and making sure that you are being aware that there will be these things that are trying to pull you back into your old reality, but also there'll be things at the same time trying to push you forward into something new. So that's a concept which I think is important, especially when you're setting up a new business. And with regards to, I always talk about motivation because it's key, and it's the main topic within my book. And one of the things I'm going to highlight here is that you have done a great job with promoting your appearance on this podcast, which most people don't do. And what I see as one of your strengths is your ability, and probably your motivation, is to get recognition. And that's why you've mentioned that you've got the work with the Event Corp, doing the getting the content on and promoting their events or whatever it might be. But it's not just about skills, it's actually doing something that you want to do and you're motivated by. So I'm guessing that your star is quite high, and that you don't mind doing that. You don't mind putting yourself up front. And sadly, a lot of people do avoid doing it, and it holds their business back. So it's one of the key things I've seen in what you've been doing in the last few weeks, and it's going to hold you in good stead going forward. So just a few comments about the 7-step process and a few of the elements. Any comments you got to make about those things that I mentioned, Paul?
Um, no, I read your book. You gave it to me when we met last year, and I read it in when I was in. I, I read it whilst I was in Mallorca on holiday last year, and it was a bit disrupted because I was on holiday with my 5-year-old. But yeah, a lot of it holds true, and I think I said to you earlier. I'm not sure if it was while we were live or not, but I don't feel like I have any particular skills in marketing other than just putting myself out there. So I understand that why people don't like doing it. I wouldn't have liked doing it 15, 20 years ago. But I've got my personality's developed in that way. But they, the, the people that don't like doing it probably have more technical ability, and think that it's not necessary. Maybe I don't know, but I don't think it can ever hurt to put yourself front
No,
and
but I
center.
think attitude comes first, and the technical know-how comes afterwards. And if you've got the right attitude and you've got the enthusiasm, you've got Paul, then the skills you can develop. It comes back to when you employ people. If you
Yeah,
only employ people for skills, if they haven't got the right attitude, they're never really going to be much good for your business. So hire with the attitude, and then you can teach the skills.
yeah.
I think that's a good concept to always remember. So
Yeah.
we'll draw into the end of our time, Paul. But before we go, I'd like to ask you a question about your 20-year-old self. Now you see yourself doing this. What would you have told your 20-year-old self those years ago?
Yeah, I'll try and keep it brief, but I very much followed a path that my parents, who were fantastic parents and still are fantastic parents, but they came from a very regimented background, and they saw certain things as decent jobs and certain things as not decent jobs. And I did some holiday repping when I was 18, 19, and I should have carried on doing that, and I loved it. I was passionate about it. I was good at it, but I didn't. I went and got a job working for a mortgage company, which in the finance department, which was not right for me whatsoever. But mum and dad thought it was a sensible job, so it seemed like the right thing to do. So very much look at it with my boy now, about telling him, find you might not know what you love when you're 18, but you probably know what you don't love, and
Yeah,
go and try and find what you love, and do that, because when you love what you do, you can be passionate about it. Like, I don't mind working any hours and any time to try and make my business work now, because I'm really passionate about it. If I was running a mortgage company, I probably wouldn't be, so it would fail.
yeah, absolutely. But
Yeah,
I mean, I talk about it in terms of energy. It's what gives you energy and what saps your energy. So if you're working in an environment and doing something that saps your energy, then ultimately you're never really going to perform at your best, and ultimately work is going to become a grind. So if you flip it around and do something that actually gives you energy, you do it because you love it, then
yeah,
that energy is actually, you get energy from your work, then that's where you need to be. And
yeah,
anybody listening to this and feeling that the work doesn't give them energy, then think about, well, what is it that you need to change? It might not be changing your job completely. It's about maybe just thinking about, actually, what is it about this work that I like? What do I
yeah.
need to get more of? And a good concept and a good exercise to do is as a stop-start review, which I get my clients to do with regards to thinking about what they need to stop doing, do more of, do less of, and actually that exercise that clarifies the things that they need to concentrate on with regards to their
And
work.
that very last point, but I think that hits the nail on the head in terms of, I thought that work was just rubbish. I thought work was rubbish, and that was a fact of life. And you went to work, and it was rubbish because everyone else I knew thought work was rubbish. And then you got to the weekend, and you lived for the weekend when you're in your 20s, and then it's back to work again on Monday, and work's rubbish. So, but
Yeah,
it kind of pays the bills. So that's the kind of attitude that I had towards work for quite a long time, and that's the thing that I would probably change.
yeah,
Uh, it's not. It is a risk. What we're doing at the moment is a risk, setting up your own business, but equally, it's not a risk because I'm enjoying every day. Whereas for a very long, and I did when I was at Forwarder as well, and when I was at Recon before that doing the events, I did more or less enjoy every day. But before that, I rarely enjoyed a day at work, and it was just a fact of life. So that's probably the advice that I'd give myself, and absolutely what I'll be saying to my son.
that's a great way to end the podcast on that note. Thank you, Paul, for your time today. Really interesting. I really wish you all the best with your business. It's early stages, I know, but what I can see is that you've got massive amounts of energy and enthusiasm for it. So, it's going to be a bumpy road for sure, as we know with anything that we start. Everything's not going to go as planned, but I'm sure you realise that. But overall, I think I'm excited for you. I really do wish you all all the best.
That's the perfect thing about not having a plan. It can't go to plan. Yeah, great. It's been
Great
fun, Mark.
stuff, Paul. I will leave you to get on with whatever you're doing today.
Yeah, great stuff. Cheers, mate.
There we are. It's Paul, who, like a fledgling business, is running now with regards to events and networking. So if you've got anything with regards to that, you want to connect with him, then, and anything else you want to talk to Paul about with regards to how he's set up his business in the last few weeks, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to talk to you. He's got lots to give, and also most of you probably were already connected to him, so you know the value that he brings. So thank you for those that joined us live, and if you're catching this on replay, don't hesitate to leave any comments for me or for Paul. I'm sure we'd be more than happy to answer any questions, and also don't hesitate to connect with us if there's anything else we can help you with. Just one last mention for the book. And with regards to if you want to contribute, buy me a coffee, there's a QR code. And like I said at the beginning of the episode, I am saving up for a Stream Deck. So I'm not relying on clicking with my mouse. And once I've got that £149, then I'll invest it in a Stream Deck, and I'll let you know when I've done that. So hopefully get a few contributions from you guys would make all the difference and keep the wheels in motion with regards to the podcast. So thank you again to Paul. Thank you to anybody that joined us. For now, let's say cheerio, have a great day, and I will see you on the next show very soon.